We're going to bring up Hayder Radha, who's a professor in the engineering department. You've heard Canvas mentioned several times throughout the day. As the director of Canvas, he's going to just give you a quick update and overview of what exactly that is. And then we'll move on to our policy session.
Okay, so as Mary said, that you've heard a lot about Canvas, so I'll try to go really fast. I know we're behind schedule, so probably very quick 10-minute overview of what we're doing with the Canvas project. This is something we initiated last year, and has been a lot of excitement about Canvas. So the centerpiece of the Canvas program is our autonomous vehicle platform that is equipped with state-of-the-art sensors. And the platform is really meant to be a research platform. As John indicated earlier, we're not really in the business of building vehicles, we are in the business of doing research. So we're trying to address a host of problems that hopefully beyond what the industry is looking at right now. This is some of the high-level objectives. I'll really go very quickly on this. Basically, we're trying to achieve what we call a superhuman level of situational awareness. This is beyond just looking at, okay, there are pedestrians or there are vehicles around the environment of the autonomous vehicle. We're trying to actually assess and recognize the situation so the vehicle takes the proper action. For example, distinguishing between if the pedestrian is a child that's not attended by an adult versus a child that we know that will be able to handle an emergency situation very differently. Of course, we're looking at cost and economics, and also one of the advantages we have here in Michigan that we could actually drive the vehicle in different type of weather, including snow, for example, which is something probably they cannot brag about in most places in Arizona. So I don't think you could see that. Unfortunately, the colors are perfect in here. But the bottom line right now is that there are many options actually in terms of sensing modalities you could use on these autonomous vehicles. But there is a convergence that these three sensing modalities are going to play a pivotal role in future vehicles. So cameras obviously is one of them, radars is another one, but there is a new sensing modality which is based on laser, which is known as LiDARs. So the combination of these modalities is something going to be very important actually in bringing them together and integrate them in any future autonomous vehicle, because then we'll be able to cover a broad range of scenarios that the vehicle may encounter as it drives around its environment. So the first important component of any autonomous vehicle architecture is really what we call sensing. So just what I showed, the three sensing modalities, that basically cover that box. The next step is once the vehicle collects the data using these sensing modalities, the vehicle is going to need to perceive and recognize the environment within which it's driving. So we call that in robotics or in computer vision perception. And then last but not least is once the vehicle perceives the environment, then it has to make a decision how it's going to go around that environment, how it's going to maneuver, and because there will be multiple options. Collectively, between those two boxes, which is the perception and decision, this is really where artificial intelligence resides within an autonomous vehicle. This is the brain of the vehicle itself. Now, we could also enhance the vehicle by supplying some mapping data. This is some of it similar to the navigation map that we have today, but actually with the new technology of autonomous vehicle, it's much more than that. I'll show you some example. This particular technology area, actually, there is a term for it in industry called SLAM, which is simultaneous localization and mapping. We could also complement the vehicle through vehicle-to-vehicle communication or vehicle-to-infrastructure. But there is actually a clear distinction in here between the autonomous component, which is everything kind of in green, and then the connectivity component, which is the one in gray on the top. So right now I'm going to focus on the autonomous component primarily, and we talked about the sensing. Basically, we're trying to achieve what we call 360-degree sensing around the vehicle itself. This is an example of what we could do with perception. You may have heard the buzzword these days about deep learning or deep neural networks. This is actually an example of a deep neural network that we're using here in MSU for the vehicle to recognize other vehicles around it and also estimate the distance to these vehicles. And this is really a very small part of the brain of the vehicle that you're trying to build. So this is just to give you a bit of a scale of what you're trying to do. Now, one of the most powerful things that we're trying to do with these vehicles is developing maps of real time. So let me see. So this is actually taking the laser around the MSU campus and driving around, and we're able to develop a very detailed 3D map, we call it point cloud, of the MSU campus. So you see the MSU library, the museum, Bowman Tower, and so on. The vehicle, we're showing an aerial view because of the power of the information that's generated by this laser mapping. Basically, the vehicle is following, if you see the white dots on the map in here, but again, because of the richness of the information, we're actually able to show an aerial view of the environment. It's basically just creating a 3D detail map of the area. And you can see the MSU administration. So other thing we could do, this thing actually, the previous video I just showed you, it's based on doing some post-processing of the data and creating a map. Now this is how the data look like in real time as the vehicle is driving around. So as you see, as the vehicle is actually moving, it's constructing and enriching the environment. And this is what's known as SLAM, it's simultaneous localization and mapping. The vehicle is actually trying to figure out exactly what is it located within the 3D environment that's driving in. We have complemented this thing, you saw probably a minute ago, and now you can see we are using some annotation to help the vehicle maneuver itself better. So for example, we tell it there is an upcoming stop sign. When you're going to take a right, there will be a speed limit of 25 miles per hour, and there is a crossing for pedestrians. So the vehicle take a proper action and get ready for the next step. One of the things we're really pretty proud of that we've done so far is we actually develop a relatively actually basic technique to enable the vehicle to drive over the snow. So one of the challenges with the snow, of course, is completely covers the road, and there are no lines, and you cannot see anything. Basically, a lot of the technology right now is based on detecting lines, and then the vehicle will be able to center itself within the lane based on detecting lines. We took the vehicle actually to this racetrack, and the vehicle was capable of staying within the track throughout the whole session, actually this training session, and it's something really caught a lot of attention, and we're very proud of it. I want to emphasize this is really kind of the beginning of the iceberg, if you will. Not use ice with snow, but we're really have a long way to go. But this is just to demonstrate that we're able, hopefully, to develop something very compelling around this platform. There are many other works we're doing. This is work by Professor Jean Mongeau in computer science and some of the students in pedestrian detection using artificial intelligence and deep learning to detect these things. They've done actually an excellent job in the performance, and frankly, we're doing better than best of the state of the art. You may have heard about, for example, the mobile eye camera, which has recently been acquired by Intel, and frankly, the performance of the work that we're doing here is at least at par, probably even better than what the best of the best, if you will, is capable of doing in terms of pedestrian detection. This is other examples. You can see this right around the engineering building. So there are many other technologies actually developing. One of them is thermal imaging. This is about detecting, other objects, pedestrians, other vehicles during the night. And this test was actually done around the MSU Union. This work is done by Professor Hayder Radha in computer science also. One of the things I want to conclude with, and I'm actually kind of hurrying up because I know we're out of time, so I'm sorry for speaking too fast. But I want to make sure that we make a distinction between the autonomous vehicle technology and the connected vehicle technology. And this is something very important because under Canvas, we're actually trying to integrate both. And frankly, a lot of the work that's going on in industry right now for these two areas is basically emerging and very much independently of each other. And I think it will be important to really think about the possibilities when both of these technologies come together. Of course, all these different possibilities, either autonomous vehicle, connected vehicle, or the combination, they're driving the future of mobility. I want to just, I think John already touched on this, so I will not spend too much time on it. But this is the connected part of campus that we're working on. This is, in fact, we rented a U-Haul to demonstrate the possibility that we could achieve by having connected vehicle-to-vehicle communication. So you could see that this is Tim was talking about this problem. We actually rented the U-Haul, and we did this test. So the U-Haul, you can see, is actually blocking the view of the other vehicle, and you almost had an accident. You can see actually this vehicle is going to be changing lane, and so this is just one example of how could we develop technologies that could help. So this is an example actually what we're trying to do, which is we actually broadcast a video that's captured by the U-Haul to the other vehicle, and the other vehicle will be capable of seeing that there is a pedestrian there. So the two vehicles communicating with each other. And what we're doing in here, I would like to emphasize, is really way beyond what is the basic technology is doing right now, which is basically just exchanging messages. Here we're trying to actually help, each vehicle will be helping each other by exchanging sensor data, which is, this is a form of sensor fusion among vehicles. So there are many other examples that we could go over with, but I just want to conclude by saying also we're not looking at sensing only externally, but also internally. So within campus, actually, the occupants and the interaction between the occupants and the vehicle will play a very major role. This is kind of the overall architecture of how we're bringing these things together. I would like to conclude with this couple of interesting quotes actually from an article that was published in IEEE Spectrum magazine last year. And this shows really a very interesting dilemma that, do you envision a policeman giving a ticket to an autonomous vehicle? The autonomous vehicle decided to go beyond the speed limit, for example. But there are a lot of interesting things that could happen. And I would like to conclude by quoting something from that article. Autonomous vehicle hopefully will not only bring safety, but also will bring some civility to to society. So that's all I have, and sorry for rushing because we're running out of time.